Have you ever seen an uglier saw? I got this thing for 20 bucks. It doesn't turn over. Something's seized in here. Notice the chain's on backwards? Obviously missing the top cover, the bar nut. Lord knows what else it's missing. So I'm going to do a breakdown on this. This is a 365 special. At least that's what the cover says. Tag says 372 XP. If it's a 372, that's fantastic. 365, that's fantastic. It's 20 bucks. Literally, I think this has been in a basement somewhere, so I don't know what I'm getting into. Let's do a teardown, and you guys don't need to see me do a teardown on this, but I'm going to do a teardown, and if there's anything notable, I will let you know. So the saw is coming along here. I've got it pretty well apart. I actually got the piston to move. I hit it with the impact and it actually turned. I was trying to get the clutch off and that was not coming, so I needed to use a ultimately you need to have the adapter but also a breaker bar, and you have to really give it heck, and the only way to actually get leverage, I think, is just to stick the screwdriver in here and work against it. Anyway, just wanted to make a note that there's a washer here that's going to go on right after the seal goes in. So I just wanted to make a quick note of that, because this is something you can easily forget. Let's not forget that. So far I'm actually pretty pleased with how this is turning out. I might not actually lose money on this saw. As long as I don't mess up the case here, we'll be all set. Next steps, I'm going to take all the bolts, the case bolts out, and we're going to crack the case, I think, because I need to put new bearings in this. Wow, this is a good score. Because there's no scoring. Smooth chamber. Beautiful cross hatching from the factory. Gorgeous and untouched. That's fantastic. Yeah, a gasket issue from the factory. This was not on quite right. Very interesting. Anyway, this is impressive. If the crank pans out to be okay, I may just need to replace the bearings. If I just need to replace the bearings, this is going to be one heck of a build. I'm real happy I bought the saw. Real happy. So, figured I'd show you what's going on. Gonna pull the flywheel off, pull the rest of the pieces off, crack the case, see where we're at. So as I suspected, the main bearings are kind of cooked. Ew. It doesn't even want to roll at all. So, no crying over spilt milk here. I will just simply do new, which is totally fine with me. I'm going to throw these in the ultrasonic first and get these as clean as possible. Then I'll see if I can pop these bearings out. That one actually goes. What, am I going to trust it? Nope. Nope. So I'll put new on. Crank's fine. Probably the best 20 bucks I've spent. Of course, it's a big project, but hey, who's complaining? Not me. And since on my other 372 video I didn't show cracking the case and the reassembly of that, maybe we'll do that here. So this is not going to be an extensive video because essentially the other The 385 and the 372 videos are more or less complete anyway, with all the information that you could need. But just to show what I'm doing here in case anybody's interested, maybe we'll show some of the reassembly here. So continuing this 372 project, I've got this case half that I've cleaned up more or less, and now I'm pretty much ready to put the bearings in. I've got the bearings in the freezer and the crank in the freezer. We're going to have to do this all in pretty much tight succession here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to heat this up. I'm going to put the cold bearing in. It should just drop right in. And then the bearing is going to warm up. I'll probably heat it up even a little bit more. And then hopefully the crank just drops right in as well. Then I'll put the gasket on. We'll let this cool down. We'll put the gasket on with some Loctite 515. And then we're going to do the same thing to the other case half. Heat it up and whatnot. So I'm going to get this warm. Go easy. About 150 right now. I want this to be about 250. I went from 64 to 150. To 17. Now we're getting there. Let me go get a bearing. These bearings literally come out of the freezer. I'd like to see 250. $241, $254. Good. Just make sure it's down quite a bit. Make sure this is nice and warm. Ideally, I want this whole thing flush. Temperature went down quite a bit. That's about as far down as that gets. So the bearing is actually going to be pretty warm after you did this. So now the bearing's nice and warm, and this crank was in the freezer. Hopefully this should drop right in. Perfect. Didn't go quite all the way. now we're home. Okay, crank's still pretty cold. This case hopefully is cooling down. Now I'm going to get the gasket out, put some 515 on it, and then we're going to heat up the other side. So here's my 372 XP gasket, and I've got some Loctite 515 here. One thing to not forget, the positioners. I prefer to have the whole gasket wet. That side's ready to go. Positioners are in, the gasket's on, and the surface is all wet. Let's get this ready here. Pop this off here and down just for the moment. $160-ish. $258. There's our temperature. Bug of the case. This one sinks in. We're going to let it sink in. Great. There you have that. Now we should be able just to pull it and put the two pieces together. This way, actually. Yeah. Come on. Now we should be able to get the positioning screws in place and get it just to go. Don't try to over tighten them. Pretty even. Got to check the gap here and make sure it's even all the way, so you don't stress one more than the other. Oh man, we're almost there. Looks good. See? No more gap. The likelihood of stripping these out is pretty low because they're so much thread on these that you put quite a bit of torque on. Looks good. So let's get the hand tightener here. See if we can feel it. Two, 3, 4, 5, 6. Done. You now have a case that's back together. Hooray! I'm going to put the oil seals in next. Let's do those. A little bit of 2-cycle on these. So I've got the oil seal on there. This just gets pressed in. And I'll tap that in with a socket. A little cockeyed looking. Seal's in there. Don't know exactly how deep it's supposed to go. Tight. Zero play. Okay. Time to do the one towards the outside here. A little 2-cycle on this too. That's in. That's even all the way around. But this oil seal is slightly big because there's some funny adapter in there. It's an adapter piece. This piece is what actually does the seal, so I'll have to clean this pretty good. So the rest of this is just simply putting this back together. If I find anything interesting, I will keep you posted. You know, I think this seal went in too far, so I've got a pick here, and I just jammed the pick in and lifted this thing out. And I may or may not have been right, but you know what? For the price of one of these seals, i.e. pretty cheap, I don't want to take the chance. So I'm going to sacrifice this seal to make sure that I get this correct. Don't want it in too deep because then it runs up against the bearing race or something like that. It would be bad. So I'll just put new in, tap it in when I get one. I don't think I got one sitting around, but I'll look around. Oh well. Again, you see how I put them in, so I'm just going to keep going on this project. I will probably deck this a little bit on the mill. Don't know how much yet. I want to get the piston and cylinder back on here and see where we end up. Just checking squish on this 372. And I had to use the bigger solder for this, but where we're at is about 42 thousandths. I did put a Meteor piston in this. So this is a single ring Meteor piston as opposed to the dual ring OEM, which is this guy. Now this piston actually looked okay to me, but the rings are stuck. So I'm going to keep the piston, but I could have replaced the rings, but might as well go to a single ring piston. Single ring pistons have less friction overall. So I'm going to deck this 22 thousandths. That way we set the squish at 20 thousandths. Once I have that, I'll check timing numbers. And so I'm not going to check timing numbers now. And once I have timing numbers, then I'll do some port work. And then we'll actually do the reassembly.